Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video for the Roblox scripting tutorial series. Today's video will talk about the DataStore service. This service allows you to manage data stores. These are a way to save and get data anytime you want. First of all, I'll explain you how they work using this mind map. The DataStore service allows you to create multiple data stores, each with multiple scopes. Each scope has multiple keys, which can contain certain data. A good way to understand this is with your file system. You have the desktop, which could be the DataStore service, with multiple folders with different names. These represent each data store. Inside each folder you have subfolders representing each scope. Then inside these subfolders you have more folders representing the keys. Finally, in these you have images, videos, audios, whatever you want. This will be the actual data. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you how to actually use them. So I'll just add a script in server script service. Data stores can only be accessed through the server, okay? So the way you actually get this service is by using game column get service DataStore service, okay? And this is actually the way you would get any kind of service, but in this case we'll just do it with the DataStore service. So we have to store this in a variable. I'll just call it DSS, okay? And now the way we actually create a data store is by using by referencing first the DataStore service and then using get DataStore. So now here we have to first type the name and the scope. The scope is optional and by default it will be global. Okay, so imagine we wanted to create a data store to save a player's data, for example. So we'll just name this data store player data. And for now we won't be using any scope, but we could, for example, if we wanted to save first of all the leader stats, we can just create this scope called the leader stats. Okay, and now we have to store this in a variable, so I'll just do leader stats db, standing for database. Okay, so now, first of all we need to detect when a player joins the game, and then actually get the player's data. So I'll just use this player added event, and now, in order to get as I said before, right now we have here our data store along with the scope. So now we just need to tell the data store what key we want to be using. So let's just create here local player data. It's going to be equal to. So how do we actually get the data from a key? We first reference the data store or the database. Okay, column get async. And now here between parentheses we need to type the key. In this case we will just use the player's user ID, since if we were to use the player name and this player changed his name, then his data would be reset and we don't want that. So player.user ID. Okay, so this line right now won't actually won't actually store the data but just get it. So if we were to print this right now as it is, we'll see how it will just print nil. Well, here you can see how I got this error. This is because in order to access data stores we need to publish our game and then go to settings and security and enable access to API services. So I'll just do that real quick. Now if we just play this again, we will see how it prints nil. This is because it's trying to access the data with my key, but since since there is no such key for now, it just doesn't get anything. So now what we will normally do is just create a folder for the leader stats. So just create a folder and store it in the player's object. Let's just name it leader stats, okay? And then imagine in the player data we have a coins value. So we'll just coins value. It's going to be instance.new and int value and place it inside the folder. Name it coins and coins.value.value. It's going to be equal to player data coins. Okay. So right now, the idea right now I have is, so in this data store, usually you will store a table. Okay. So when actually when you use get async, you can only store a number, a string or something like that, but in most cases I recommend using a table since it's way easier. You just have a table, and here we will just contain, well, in this table we will just type, for example, the name of the value along with the actual value. So now imagine if it's the first time the player joins the game, so he has no data, right? There is no data store, well, there is no key with his user ID, so we just want to have some default values, right? So here, if this is nil, we want to, well, we wanted to get, well, we wanted to use this table, which will be coins, and by default let's just give the player 50 coins. So right now when the player joins, player data will attempt to be this keys data, but if it has nothing, so if it is nil, it will then be using this table. So right now that will be everything. So if we just play the game, you will see how when we join, okay, the player has 50 coins, but now you will see how if we were to change these coins and leave the game, it wouldn't actually save. That is because we now need to make it so it actually saves the data. So it will save the data whenever the player leaves the game, so use player removing. Okay, so now local player data is going to be equal to a table with a coins value, which will be equal to the player.leaderstats.coins.value. Okay, and now if we want to save data, we will now need to first reference the database column, and instead of typing get async as before, we will now use set async. Now here we will need, now here we will first type the player's user ID, which will be the key, and then the actual data. So player.userid, player data. Now something many games do is just using this bind to close event. Okay, so sometimes imagine Roblox is down or you shut down the servers, it's like the whole server is closing. Okay, so sometimes this player removing event might not fire in time, so it's often recommended to just use this bind to close event. Okay, so now here we can just loop through all of the players, okay, and just copy this code and place it here. Okay, so this is just in case the server shutdowns or something, to make sure the player data is actually saved. So now if we play this, you will see how we first of all get 50 coins, and now we have to make sure that whenever we change these coins, we do it through the server. Okay, so players, let's just go to leader stats folder, and let's say I want to have 150 coins. Okay, now if I leave the server and rejoin, you will see how I will just spawn in here with 150 coins. So really that's everything about data stores. Now there is a plugin which costs now money, but it's this data store editor, which is very useful if you want to kind of visualize how these data stores work. So here we need to type the name of the data store, in our case it will be player data, along with the scope, so leader stats. So now we just type connect, and here we need to type the key. Well, the key of my profile is 15, 72, 62, 51, 57. So now here we can see how this makes reference to a dictionary, which has this coins value equal to 150, which is, well, what we said. Okay, if I can just go ahead and save, I can just go ahead and change this value, for example, to 200, and if now I play the game, you can see how I have 200 coins. So this plugin is not necessary if you want to work with data stores, but I highly recommend it because it is very useful. Okay, so something important to keep in mind is that in data stores you cannot store certain data, such as colors, vectors, enums, among others. If you have any doubts about which type of data is allowed, make sure to check Roblox documentation. So that's everything for today's video about data stores. If you found this video useful, make sure to like and subscribe so more people find my videos. Bye!